Imagine this, a brand new, futuristic capital city, literally rising up out of the jungles of Borneo. That was the incredible dream behind Nusantara, Indonesia's massive, multi-billion-dollar project. But what happens when a dream like that runs headfirst into a new political reality? Well, today, we're going to dig into why the brakes have been slammed on this mega project.
You see, not so long ago, Nusantara was being sold as the perfect answer to all of Jakarta's problems. I mean, we're talking about a capital city that's literally sinking and is completely gridlocked with traffic. The vision for Nusantara was, well, it was the exact opposite. A green, high-tech city, a symbol for a whole new Indonesia built from scratch. But then, everything changed. A new president was elected, and with him came a whole new set of priorities and a massive shift in where the money was going. All that momentum for Nusantara just, well, it stalled out. So what exactly happened here? Let's break it all down. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look back at that amazing vision for Nusantara. Then, we'll get into the big political shift that changed everything. After that, we're going to follow the money to see exactly where the funding went. Then we'll check out what's actually happening on the ground today. And finally, we'll ask that big question. Is this dream simply deferred, or is it done? All right, let's start with the dream itself. Because Nusantara was never just about moving a few government offices. No, this was a chance to build a true 21st century capital from the ground up, a shining example of a modern, sustainable Indonesia. It was a massive deal. Now, here's where the story takes a sharp turn. In late 2024, a new president took office, and boy did he bring a different playbook. The entire focus of the government shifted almost overnight. Under the last president, Jokowi, Nusantara was the legacy project. It was the star of the show. But the new president, Prabowo Subianto, he has a totally different signature policy, a huge, nationwide, free, nutritious meal program. And putting that program first has had some pretty major consequences for the new capital. And just to give you a sense of how big this new priority is, the government has set aside around $4.4 billion for that free meal program in 2025. And that's just for 1 year. That is a massive chunk of change, and it sent ripples through the entire national budget. So the obvious question is, where did all that money come from? Well, the answer is that it came from a major reshuffling of the national budget, and that meant some pretty deep cuts to a lot of other government programs. Basically, the new administration took out a giant red pen, went through the country's budget, and started slashing spending everywhere to free up cash for its big new program. And this chart right here really tells the story. This shows the budget for the Public Works Ministry, the actual department in charge of building Nusantara. Their budget was cut by more than 60%. 60%. It's kind of hard to build a new city with that kind of haircut. And listen, these weren't just abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. These cuts had real-world impacts. We're talking about the postponement of dams, of irrigation projects for farms, of basic road and bridge maintenance. Really important stuff across the whole country. The frustration inside the government was just palpable. I mean, get this. When the Public Works Minister himself was asked about how things were going, he gave this incredibly blunt answer. He said, "All our budget is blocked. Why are you asking about progress? There is no budget. The progress is that lunch has been purchased." Wow. Okay, so we have all these budget cuts, these totally new priorities. What does that actually mean for Nusantara today? Like, what does it look like on the ground right now? Let's take a look. Here is a fascinating little detail that tells you everything about the state of limbo the project is in. The presidential decree that would officially make Nusantara the capital, well, it hasn't even been signed yet. So legally speaking, Jakarta is still the capital of Indonesia. Now, if you look at the official numbers, you might be a little optimistic. They say Nusantara has a population of around 147,000 people. Sounds pretty good, right? But when you actually break down that number, you see a very different picture. The vast majority of those people, over 90%, are locals who were already living in that area before construction even started. The number of new people who have actually moved in for the project is still incredibly small. So what you've got is this really strange situation. The big, fancy government buildings, like the palace, they're mostly done. But the actual infrastructure you need for a city to function, houses, water, power, that's all lagging way behind. And you can bet investors are noticing.
They're getting nervous, and there are now real worries that Nusantara could end up as a kind of ghost city.
So what on earth does all of this mean for the future of Nusantara? Well, let's just say the original timeline has been completely thrown out the window. Now there's a new and maybe more realistic plan in place. Yeah, that original plan to have the government up and running in Nusantara by 2024, that is long gone. The new target for the president and the core government functions to finally make the move is now 2028. And while the long-term goal of a fully completed city by 2045 is technically still on the books, it's pretty clear the project's timeline has been stretched way, way out.
So, to be clear, Nusantara isn't dead, but it has definitely shifted into a much, much lower gear. What started out as this high-speed sprint toward the future has now become a very long, slow, and steady marathon. And that leaves us with the big unanswered question. Will Nusantara ever actually become that shining city of the future? Or will it just be a symbol of a grand, beautiful vision that was put on hold?